Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Weeb from Sportsnet. Together, we are Kenny and Renny, and this is the Kenny and Renny post-game show after what I think could probably only be described. And usually, people aren't on board with me when I have these kind of conversations afterwards. It seems the chat room is entirely on board with me on what can only be described as an unmitigated disaster tonight by the Winnipeg Jets, who did not look like they belonged in the same league with the Buffalo Sabres. At one point, we were talking upstairs, and I had likened that to seeing my beer league team suddenly get thrown out on the ice with a WHL squad. This was not even close. Now, it's funny, if anyone was listening to CJOB before the game or Tim and Friends before that, I described the Winnipeg Jets as escape artists for many games this season. In the last game that you saw them play against the Buffalo Sabres, the Winnipeg Jets were escape artists. The Buffalo Sabres were the better team in that game, and the Jets came away with a 3-2 victory in that game. Well, I'll tell you this right now. One of the reasons they're escape artists is because, like all good escape artists, they have tools that allow them to escape from very tight situations. One of those tools clearly is Connor Hellebuck, who once again was all over it tonight. Connor Hellebuck stole that last game the Jets played where they were outplayed and outclassed by the Buffalo Sabres, and they came away with that victory. Another thing they have is a lot of potential goal scorers who can really capitalize on a lot of things. One of the things we talked about is the Jets' high shooting percentage for a good chunk of this season. It was third in the league not long ago. I noticed today that it dropped down to sixth. I don't know what today's game does for them as well, but the Jets don't need a lot of opportunities to put the puck in the back of the net so they can go get caved in by teams and make it look not so bad. Now, if you were across the league, if you were in Florida or California or Seattle looking at the scores tonight, you would have thought there was, a fairly tight game between the Buffalo Sabres and the Winnipeg Jets. Let's get this straight. If not for Connor Hellebuck, this game would have been long out of reach. There would have been no chance of making this look like it was a close game. A 3-2 score does no justice to what the Buffalo Sabres did to the Winnipeg Jets out there today. And I think most of you are getting it. One of the things I love, the first comment in the show today was from Jerry Brown, who said, "I'm with you tonight, Sean. This would not have been fair if the Jets had tied it up. If it hadn't been for Bucky, this would have been 5 or 6-0. I love the fact that I didn't even have to open my mouth, and Jerry Brown knew where I was going to be going with this today. Hey, that's called consistency. People clearly know what to expect, as does Rob Mahoney, who says, we should probably have a poll. How many I told you so's will Sean say tonight? Is it 1, 2, 3, 4, 873? I'm not sure what it is, but I think that what I take from this from Rob is that, like, there's a lot of times I have conversations in this show, and I like to think of myself as not being afraid to deliver the hard truths. And sometimes fans don't want to hear the hard truths, but this is why when people are saying, hey, they won, like the Buffalo game, hey, they won this game, what's everyone complaining about? What are you being so negative? Well, this is the road you travel. This is what happens when Connor Hellebuck isn't able to entirely bail you out. Rough game tonight for the Winnipeg Jets. This did not look good at all. I don't know what else there is to say about this game other than the fact that the Winnipeg Jets have not been themselves for some time. They've now lost 4 of their last 6 games. And before that, when they were actually winning, and we were having conversations on this very show about the Winnipeg Jets and why it mattered that while they were winning, they weren't playing the right way, because eventually that dries up and things turn in the other direction. Consider it, ladies and gentlemen, that things have turned and gone in the other direction, and the Jets are kind of reaping what they sowed at the end of that really impressive run in early January, where they won 8 of 9 games, but seemed to be, sneaking a game out here, sneaking a game out there, not playing the Rick Bowness blueprint. Well, this is where that's led. I don't think that we're going to bring in Ken, and Ken is going to give his take on it. I don't know that it's going to be much different than mine. I'm surprised to see the chat room so fully on this side of it. I would have thought there would have been a few more rosy people in there who said, oh, it's 3-2. We almost pulled this off. It would have been great. That game was a slaughter. It was two different levels of teams. I don't know what else there is to say about that. I know some people hate it when we talk about other teams. We are going to have to talk about Rasmus Dahlin tonight. We are going to have to talk about Owen Power, who, I mean, geez, at 19 years old, how good did he look out there tonight? We're going to get to all that. We also have a special guest. Next two games before they go into the break are Hockey Night in Canada games. John Bartlett is going to be on the call in those games, and he's already in town, so we're going to bring him into the show shortly after Kenny goes to the buffet. So let's get to the buffet as we speak. It's piping hot. There's a lot of spiciness on it tonight. Time to bring in the guy with the best music in the business. Here comes Kenny. Kenny, if there's one thing I love watching you do, I love watching you feast at the buffet, and we're going to get to that. I'm going to ask you to try to keep it a little bit short because we've got John Bartlett waiting in our most comfy. It's a good-looking green room that I see him in here right now. We're going to be bringing him in right away. Before we do get to that, it's nice to be back in a suit again. I think I had bed sores from that time that I was sitting on the couch watching these games. Good to be in a suit. You're looking great. I know that's a number from Frankie and the boys down at Vittorio Rossi. He helped me put this thing together as well. If you want to look like Kenny and Renny, head on down to Vittorio Rossi on Corden Avenue. Go see Frankie and the boys. Tell them Kenny and Renny sent you, and tell them when you see them that you appreciate them dressing them up like this so you can stop looking at me in my pajama pants while we do these broadcasts. Ken, what happened out there tonight?
Yeah, you took casual weekend a little bit too far, Sean, but yeah, it's interesting. I'm just in the midst of filing here, so I'm gonna keep it tight to the buffet, and then I'm gonna push send. Yeah, I mean the Jets didn't play well. This is very simple, and part of the reason was because of what you said. I mean, the Buffalo Sabres are a fun team to watch. They are fast. They can put the puck in the net. And occasionally they make things a little bit interesting in their own zone. But there is a reason why they're one of the highest scoring teams. Like they were tied with the Bruins going into tonight. And I think that, they are still going to be right around that. That top line of Tage Thompson, Alex Tuck, and Jeff Skinner, just fantastic to watch. The Sabres have 4 20-goal scorers. They have a very mobile back end. You talked about Owen Power, Dahlin, fantastic. But, I mean, the Jets had nothing in the tank. They had no legs. They had no sustained offensive zone time. And when they had the puck in a prime scoring area, Adam Lowry made a perfect play to Carson Kuhlman, and instead of letting it rip from the middle of the slot, he tried to backdoor it to Nikolai Ehlers. Now, I understand him looking for Ehlers, but when goals are hard to come by, simplify the game. I mean, that's the biggest thing that we heard from Rick Bowness and Nikolai Ehlers and some of the other players. I mean, we looked at Rick Bowness. He was absolutely flabbergasted at the fact that the shot wasn't taken. So, I mean, is this problematic? I mean, it's interesting. We just taped a hit for Sportsnet. I mean, I don't think it's panic mode for the Jets by any stretch, but you also can't ignore the evidence. In 5 of the last 7 games, the Jets have been held to 2 goals or fewer. I mean, we know the Jets are a much more committed defensive team. Going into tonight, they were 4th in the NHL in goals against average per game. So that's been a big step for them. But offensively, we thought as the Jets got healthier, the offense would morph into a bit of a juggernaut because the Jets had been rolling with, AHLers, waiver wire pickups, and guys who work incredibly hard, but aren't as gifted offensively. So it's interesting. There have been some nights where the Jets offense has clicked really well. They've snapped it around, but today they got a little bit stubborn with the puck, as Rick Bowness said, and that stubbornness led to some poor puck management that really got them chasing. So again, do I think the Jets are going to go through a longer stretch of not scoring? I don't think so. But I do have to say, like 5 out of 7, that's a fairly, that's not just a tiny, tiny sample size. But I mean, the Jets have 32 games left before the break, or sorry, before the season is over, regular season, and they're going to need to find a way to generate more while not sacrificing the defensive zone, because they didn't make life easier for their goalie Connor Hellebuck, and that also is a concern, Sean. He was way overworked in Nashville, and he was under siege in this game against Buffalo, and he was the only reason this looks like a one-goal game and a really tight game. The Sabres owned this hockey game, and if it weren't for Connor Hellebuck, this is an absolute blowout. You said it. I mean, and that's, that's really, there's no way to sugarcoat it. The Jets weren't good enough, and they're going to need to be a lot better on Saturday against the Flyers and on Monday against the St. Louis Blues.
Yeah, I mean, anything can happen. Anyone could lose to anyone, as evidenced by the Colorado Avalanche had a 3-2 lead with about 10 minutes or something like that left in the third period. Managed to blow that game. Had they won it, they would have been 6 points back to the Jets with 3 games in hand. I still think, where the story of this season in the Central Division has yet to be told, and no doubt the Avalanche are going to be a big player in that going down the stretch. I love getting outside perspectives, so let's time to bring in. Now it feels so weird to bring someone in without any kind of like heavy metal music or anything like that. I want to like hold up, like a lighter or something like that if I smoked, to bring in John Bartlett, but let's do that regardless. We're gonna have to do it somewhat unceremoniously. Sorry, I'll sing some kind of song if I need to, John. I don't know what's going on, but it's great to see us. So just so everyone knows, John Bartlett is going to have the call on Hockey Night in Canada on Saturday when the Philadelphia Flyers come rolling into town. He will also have the call on Monday as the St. Louis Blues. Yes? No, am I getting this? Yeah, the St. Louis Blues come rolling into town. And you're going to see a lot of Bart and Gary Galley down the stretch here because, I mean, I think we still expect the Jets to go to the playoffs, and John is going to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting on, I think, the 12 games that Sportsnet has left down the stretch here. We're going to be doing a lot of stuff down the stretch here. It's going to be great. So John popped in, had a little bit of flight troubles, but got in to see enough of this game. And I think John's probably seen more of the Buffalo Sabres than most of us have up close and personal. So I don't know if he's surprised by what we saw tonight. We shouldn't have been surprised based on what they did to the Jets the last time they played. But boy, oh boy, they took that a step further. What did you see out of that game there tonight, John?
Yeah, well, first of all, I could just go behind here, throw another log on the fire, play the piano for my own intro there. Something a little fun tonight. What did I see?
Kenny and Renny spare no expense on the green room.
That's right. This is a beautiful place. Holy cow. I don't know how you have the budget for it. Well, first of all, I travel with the weather today. So I actually got there about midway through the game. And at that point, the Jets had 11 shots. And I think they almost didn't have one the rest of that second period until the few minutes into the third. So
there was one point they had no shots in 30 minutes, or sorry, like three shots it was in 30 minutes. That's what it was.
Yeah. So, to me tonight, what I saw on the Jets side of things, and just before I get to the game, I just want to touch on this 1 second. First of all, the reverse retro sweaters, I think look great. And I love the retro style in the building on the scoreboard and everything. I've seen other teams do it. Minnesota did a good job with it. And I've seen it before with Winnipeg, but tonight I really was sort of watching it more. And even with the white way on the bottom of the scoreboard, I think it's fantastic. I'd love to see that almost regular all the time. I think it looks great. The old Matrix used to need the clapping hands. Anyways,
right. With the Mickey Mouse gloves.
Yes, the Mickey Mouse. Man, I used to love that stuff. Anyways, all right. Enough with our talking of our Daktronics and our OES and our white ways. But okay, so the Jets tonight, they looked at a sink. Turnovers. That was a critical factor for them tonight. Every time you thought they might get something going, they turned the puck over. And I think already a lot of people were sort of talking about it in the comments and everything. Too fancy. A couple times they'd have a lane, they'd have a chance. It's, here's the shot, and they're trying to make too fancy of a play. So you get into your head a little bit, when you start trying to be a little too fancy like that. And that's where I just thought they were tonight. They're maybe overthinking their game too much a little, and that's getting in the way. For the Buffalo Sabres, look, this team is back in the playoff picture. All right, Washington and Pittsburgh had a 3-point game tonight. The Sabres are banging their head on the wall over that one, or they would have a chance to be right in the mix with those two and tied. But they're right there. They're right there right now. Buffalo's got a crack here, and maybe even getting back in to a wild card spot before the All-Star break if things play out for them. So the one thing when Buffalo was in and slipped out, and I thought, are they going to hold it? They started playing well again, but the one thing to watch was always their plus minus in the goal differential. And Buffalo's got the big plus in the goal differential. And that's something you always have to look at in the standings. So they're playing some good hockey right now. I think the Sabres have a belief in their own dressing room that they're going to get into the playoffs. So, they're playing good hockey right now. So for Winnipeg to take Buffalo too lightly, I don't think anyone can take the Sabres lightly right now the way they're playing. But yeah, on the Jets side of things, and you were talking about it, Sean, saying sometimes teams that are on a streak will, if you're on a winning streak, will win a few games at the end that they probably should have lost. And when you're on a losing streak, you'll lose a few at the end that you probably could have won as you get out of it. And that's where you don't want the bad habits creeping in right now for the Jets side of things. So I think they've got a big weekend coming up. Philadelphia, you can't take the Flyers lightly. You just had a bad night against Buffalo. You can't do the same against Philadelphia. And the Blues are going to come in with a big one on Monday as well. So I think it's a really big weekend for the Jets to try and get their game back. And I still think that they're a really solid team in the West with a big chance at going on a long playoff run here. So got to get their game back in form.
No doubt. Ken, one thing that stood out about what Bart was saying there was the Jets being a little bit too cutesy, passing the puck around. But the one thing I'd say is you could almost argue that the Buffalo Sabres did the same thing on this night. There was a lot of opportunities that they were just kind of passing. Now, they ended up getting it done, and one of those passing plays resulted in, a goal there where they just removed Connor Hellebuyck from the net. If they were overpassing it a little bit, and I think they were at times, you don't have to disagree with me, but you'd be wise to do so. If they were overpassing it at some point, why did they still maintain the edge tonight that they had over the Jets? Because it was a wide one.
Oh, pace. It's all pace, Sean. The Jets had nothing in terms of legs, and the Sabres were absolutely flying. They're an incredibly fast team, up-tempo. Their defense are so active. I love the way Darlene plays. I love the way Owen Power plays. Cale Clegg, former Brandon Wheat King, I thought he was solid out there. He had to step into the play with the injury on the back end to the normal partner Samuelson. Nice job by him. I just think that this team is really fun to watch, and I'm with Bart's. I wondered. The Sabres were one of those teams where you think, they haven't been in the playoffs forever. Are they going to dip now? Their goaltending has been a bit of a struggle for them this year. But what they did, they have fun. This is a very loose room. I had a chance to, talk to a bunch of their guys, Tage Thompson, Owen Power, Kyle Oposo, when we were in Buffalo earlier this month. And, there's a real good vibe around this team. It's very similar to the Jets, Sean, in terms of their attitude. They got a bunch of guys who love hockey. They study hockey very well. They love being around the rink. They're always on the ice late. It's very similar to those Jets teams in like the 2018 era where we had these young guys growing up together and really kind of starting to blossom. But for me, the Jets had no pace. I agree with Bart's completely. Way too cute. And it's the thing. When a team is struggling to score goals, you want to be banging, don't pass up glorious opportunities. And we saw Rick Bowness on the bench shaking his head in dismay. And the Jets didn't have a ton of opportunities, but when they had opportunities, Nate Schmidt said, I don't know that we had the puck in their zone with control 3 times in the game, or in the second period. Sorry. So interesting all around. I don't think this is what we will see from the Jets on Saturday. Bart's, you've been around a long time. Sean, same for you. I understand with the whole no excuses thing, but this is a tale as old as time. The Jets just had a 5-game road trip. You get home to do the laundry on Wednesday. You get a little bit comfortable in the chair and a day off, and you have trouble winding up the old clock by the time the puck drops. And This is not an excuse for the Jets by any stretch. The Sabres were playing their third game in 4 days, but one team was very sharp and urgent, and the other was very flat, and they're going to have to pick themselves off the mat. Sean, what did you think of Rick Bowness saying he's going to need to talk to his players when you asked him that question? Go to that first,
that.
and then
No,
we'll go Lamplighter after.
No, let's go Lamplighter afterwards because that's a great topic.
Yeah,
I love that topic. Remind me to go back there afterwards.
You got the old fishing rod out there, Sean. You dumped the old line out there, and you were wondering if he was going to answer or not, and he bit the hook.
As one Winnipeg Jet player said repeatedly, there goes Reynolds again looking for headlines, right? We're not looking for backpage news here, people. We're looking for the headlines out here. Before we do get to that, I just wanted to say I know you gave the excuse of the 5 to 6 or the 5-game road trip and whatever. I'm just going to warn you right now, Ken. I've been reading the chat room all night. Usually
it's not my excuse. I'm just saying. I don't care. It's not a good excuse.
I don't think the chat room is in the mood for excuses tonight. They've got the pitchforks.
Perfect. Yeah, they're out in full force.
To rock.
Good.
You can feed them excuses at other times. It's not going to work here tonight. Okay, let's.
I'm not saying I like the excuse. I'm just telling you that this was a predictable outcome.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying. I'm looking here tonight. There's no.
The angst is high, buddy. The angst is high.
Yeah. No, it's happening. I'm going to throw it to Bart.
You know what,
what's up, Bart?
No, I was just going to say, you know what? The Ducks did the Jets a huge favor tonight and got a big win over the Avalanche. Or, or Colorado's right there, right? Like, how long have we been looking at the standings saying, all right, the Jets in Minnesota in round 1, or if they catch Dallas, those top 3 in the division, you thought maybe that's where it'll be. And now, all of a sudden, it's not, So, they've got to keep an eye on this, so.
Yeah. Well, hey Bart. So the last game that I did with you was that Pittsburgh game, and then I continued on and went to to Denver. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, you went down to Denver. No, I was going to say, when you look back at that Pittsburgh game, the Friday night game, the Jets dominated that game. They owned the game. They controlled the entire game against the Penguins. There was never a point in that game where you thought, oh, Pittsburgh's really going to get back in this one. That was a dominating performance by the Jets. So, now the other thing I've got to say, I really hope that Winnipeg sees their window of opportunity and try to do something here at the deadline. This is maybe not the year to be, to be casual or to be. This might be the year that you've got to take a shot. That you've got to take a shot when you look at the whole roster, you look at all the contracts, you look at where you're at, and you look at the Western Conference. Right now, you have Colorado in round 1, and we'll see where the Avalanche are at and how healthy they are when it gets there. But you may also avoid the Avalanche, and this could be your year that you could have a shot at taking a run in the West. So I'd like to see the Jets maybe be a little more aggressive than they usually are if they can and add a little something. So.
Well, and no doubt, I mean, Ken and I were looking at it today. The Jets are going to have all kinds of cap space when it comes time to make those moves. So that won't hold them back. I know that Kevin Shoveldayoff doesn't like to dish out much of his prospects, so that may hold them back, but we'll see. I fully expect this to be the biggest trade deadline that they've had under this regime. Of course, this is the same regime they've had since the beginning. So in Jets 2.0 history, I fully expect this to be the biggest trade deadline that they've had before this. Bart, I'm going to throw it to you for the lamplighter. We do the lamplighter on here, and we hand out a frosty, delicious 8-pack of lamplighter amber ale from the folks at TransCanada Brewing Company, who make the nectar of the gods in town here. We'll have to go have, if we can,
maybe
have
tomorrow.
A blueberry. One of the
Yes.
Well, we'll get you one. Don't worry about it. But you basically got to share with us what you thought was the nicest goal of the game. It can go either way, either team. Usually it tends towards the Jets. You don't need to follow that. I don't think even the chat room would be doing that tonight. In fact, I've seen that they haven't been. What did you think was the lamplighter of the game, John?
Well, first of all, it's funny you say lamplighter because I took the lamp shade off the lamp to have lighting for this for you. So I actually have a lamp with it's lighting me right now, lamplighter. What's the nicest goal I saw? All right, I got to think of the nicest goal I saw in that one. I'll give it the Jets pushback goal, the 3-2 goal, I guess. The Dubois one on the side there where he put it
Yeah.
just in between Comrie and the post. I thought that was a pretty sharp angle shot, and that was a good play. That was a great example of them trying to play with a little desperation and have that little zip to their game, And I think tonight the one concern you had, even when they were pressuring, is that they would maybe cough the puck up because of the way it was going all night at that point. But they didn't. A good pass and got it around, and they had the smart play to get it in. So that's the one I like tonight of the ones I saw when I got there. So.
Yeah, and I'm going Tage Thompson all the way here, boys. Great three-way passing play. Skinner getting it out wide to Tuck, and Tuck finding the trailer in the high slot with nobody in the vicinity. Jets got a little bit spun around. It felt that Pionk should have been a little bit more aggressive on Skinner along the boards, and then the Jets just kind of got caught kind of mesmerized by the puck, and not a lot of checking happening on that play for the old pretty much wide open tap. Pretty impressive moving around of the biscuit on that one as Thompson scores his 34th of the season. 68 points for Tage Thompson. I mean, Bartz, you've seen him. I mean, we'll get into that in a little bit more later, but man, what a player. What an emergence, and just a super fun player to watch. And, some Jets ties there with his father, former Jet 1.0 D-man Brent Thompson. A little bit of bloodline action going on there.
Yeah,
very interesting.
That trade's coming around for Buffalo for sure now, isn't it?
My goodness.
I would say Jason Botterill's not getting his job back, but I'm sure there are nights where he's sitting at home and saying, hey, I told you this guy was going to be good, and he was right.
No doubt.
Yeah.
So let's give a shout out to the folks at TransCanada Brewing Company and their Lamplighter Amber Ale, frosty and delicious. You know it. If you are interested in the 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale, just share with us your Lamplighter of the game, your goal of the game, and you are automatically entered to win that aforementioned frosty delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale. If you can't wait for Kenny and Renny to deliver that to you, well, then just head on down to TransCanada Brewing Company. Join them in their tap room at 1290 Kenniston. And great beer store, great pizza. You know this. One thing I've liked, all of you who I've been sending out the vouchers for, it seems like the majority of you are telling me that when you go pick up your 8-pack, you're getting a pizza at the same time. Smart move. I have not had one person tell me they regret it, so keep that up. And time to announce our Lamplighter winner from the last show. It is Frosty. So Frosty, you are officially on the clock. You know what to do. You have to send a message to me at SN Sean Reynolds. I need your full name and I need an email. I can send you the voucher. You do all that and you too will have your very own frosty delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale. Congratulations to Frosty. Ken, I'm going to let you start on the Johnston Group Got You Covered play of the game. John, how we do that is we say that play that it can be anything. It can be a big save by the goaltender. It can be a strong back check. It can be popping in and scoring a quick goal after the opposition scores. One of those things that just shows I got your back. Ken, what's your got you covered play of the game?
Yeah, for me, not a lot of great candidates in this affair. Sean, I'm going to go with the Nate Schmidt goal because the power play had been fighting it a little bit, and for the second unit to give them a little bit of a boost to get, break the goose egg, get them on the board. I know we don't usually like to give this play to goals. We like to go a little bit deeper, but there wasn't a whole lot of covered happening for the Winnipeg Jets. So I'm going to go with the Nate Schmidt marker at 15-14. Taking that pass and burying it from the slot to get the Jets on the board. Mostly because they play La Bamba, right? Mostly because of Mamba number 5 for Nate Schmidt.
Yes.
So that is my We've Got You play of the game, sponsored by the OGs, the good folks at the Johnston Group.
Bartz, is there anything that stands out to you?
Yes. Now this is for I'm going off the board a bit. It was the greatest
that's what it's
play.
for.
Yeah, it was the greatest play of the night in the building. The second intermission, the contest to roll the tire to hit center ice. The guy that rolled it and put it on the dot twice, and his second shot when it came right by the other tire, just grazed by, never touched and landed on the dot. I'm sorry I don't know his name, but that was worth the price of admission tonight. How can you, from the corner, roll the tire and landed it twice? So second intermission entertainment tonight, primo, 2 thumbs up.
I love it. That's a great pick. You know what?
I
I'm
don't know
going
if
to
you
take
guys
this.
saw it. I watched it.
I did see it also. That's a
Yeah.
deep pull right there. That's
Isn't
a
it?
deep
Well,
pull.
and the second shot, the other guy had overbaked his shot, so his tire came rolling onto his other side, and I thought this looks like the
Oh, it's
perfect shot. It's going to
gonna hit
get
it.
knocked over by the other
Yeah.
tire, but it snuck its way around it, just like two ships passing in the night, and landed right on the button. That was great stuff. Proud papa moment here. Ken knows where I'm going with this.
Oh, yeah.
My two daughters are curlers, and they're pretty darn good. I have to say so myself. I know my one daughter won Eastern Manitoba's hit, draw, tap competition and was going on to the provincial finals to compete there. We can't make it because we're going to be out of town. Too bad for that. But the provincial Scotties are happening right now, and all the volunteers got together, and there was kids ranging from 8 to I think 15, 16, 17, all involved, and there was 15 of them, and they had a draw to the button competition. And my daughter, who won the hit, draw, tap competition, put it right on the lid and outdrew all the 15 other contestants there, and won a really great curling jersey in the process, as both my daughters held signs for some of the teams at the opening ceremonies. That was a ton of fun. Manitoba's got, for my money, the best curling community in the entire world. It's a great spot, and thanks, John. Hey, you had me covered to bring that up so that I could go bragging. I don't do it often, but I had to do that.
You should.
No problem here.
Hey, they're great supporters of the show, my man. Come on.
Yes, they are. And I got to say,
girls.
speaking of, yes, they are. They are. And speaking of great supporters of the show, and speaking of people who rock it at all times, the Johnston Group, you won't find two businesses with the same challenges, but you will find 30,000 businesses with Chambers Plan employee benefits proudly administered by our friends at Johnston Group. Chambers Plan is Canada's #1 plan for employee benefits because it evolves with the way you work and live. The plan is run as a not-for-profit designed specifically to support small businesses, and its unique pooling strategy keeps rates stable so you won't have any surprises at your next renewal. Chambers Plan now comes with professional consulting on key financial, legal, and HR issues, and Teledoc telemedicine services are included with every health option. See how Chambers Plan can benefit your business by visiting chamberplan.ca. Ken, I feel like I've been talking too long, so I don't want to go in that direction that we were talking about before. We'll get to that right away. I want your take on what's been happening with the line blender, because the line blender was a Paul Maurice creation. No, it wasn't. Coaches have been doing it since the dawn of time, but he sure used it a lot more than Rick Bowness did. But Rick Bowness went into his office, saw that there was a big old cardboard box of Paul Maurice's stuff left behind, pulled out the line blender, and has been dallying with it ever since. What's going on there?
Yeah, it's been on pulse for a little bit the last little while here, but part of the problem is there have been nights where the lines have been just absolutely clicking. And Bart's was at the game against Pittsburgh, both the top 6 lines were flying, right? So you thought, oh, this is where it's going to land. I mean, Ehlers on the right with Dubois and Connor just flying. Scheifele, Wheeler, Perfetti, everybody rolling. But right now, the Jets did not have everything going. I mean, tonight, Kyle Connor didn't really have a whole lot going. But, one guy who did have a lot of activity, Nikolai Ehlers, the guy they're trying to find the best fit on here. Ehlers, 4 shots on goal, 9 shot attempts. I mean, he's all over the ice and lots of opportunity. His ability to, on the zone entries, his ability to create space in the offensive zone was still very impressive. But right now, the Jets are having trouble finding where the chemistry is at. There was an early stretch where he was really rolling, as I said, with Dubois and Connor. There was a stretch with Scheifele where they were really buzzing together. And then today they kind of went back to the old well today with Scheifele, Wheeler, and Kyle Connor. They tried to go to the old hot tub time machine, Barts. They went back to the old 2018 playoff dynamic dynamos. But that wasn't really clicking either, I guess. So it's very interesting to me. I don't know exactly where it's going to land. I like Perfetti on that line. He gives him a little bit of a different look. But at the same time, tonight it wasn't really cooking. So if it's not cooking, then you want to try something else. And, the thing with Perfetti, and Rick touched on it this morning, the one thing with Perfetti on his off wing, that sets up some great creativity in the offensive zone, but it can create some serious issues having to play everything on your backhand with the defenseman pinching down on you on the left D, coming down on the right side, being able to chip and chase. That's not an instinctual play for a guy as cerebral as Cole Perfetti. And it's hard physically for a 21-year-old rookie in this league who is undersized and has a bunch of guys coming at him 100 miles an hour. And I'm not knocking Cole Perfetti. This was an issue for Patrick Laine when he was here, and he's 6'5" and 215 pounds. So it's not a size issue, but it's a different issue to play. It's a style of play issue, and it's a comfort issue. I mean, he is a very versatile player. He can play that role, but there are some challenges for him and other players. Same thing for Ehlers when he's on the right side. So it's interesting to see. I don't know. And again, I don't know yet if Ehlers is best suited on the left side with Scheifele and Wheeler, or if he's best suited on the right side with Dubois. I mean, Dom, invisible. 9 shot attempts is not invisible. Like, he wasn't as noticeable when he puts up 4 points a night, but I wouldn't say Ehlers was invisible. In a game where a ton of Jets had zero offensive creativity, I did notice Ehlers out on the ice. So, anyways, that's neither here nor there. And I mean, I love Dom's passion and enthusiasm, but I just don't agree with the take. But tonight, the Jets lines were somebody sent me a note on the old DMs. I think somebody used the word discombobulated, and I wish I had thought about it myself, Bartz, because it's a Scrabble special. But I mean, the Jets did look discombobulated, and part of the reason, I know people are saying you don't want to get the blender out, but this is the thing: the Jets generated almost nothing in the second period. So I'm all for changing up the lines when a line, or 2 lines in this case, are not going. And then all of a sudden the fourth line comes out, they've got speed, and they have 1 or 2 good shifts. But you can't be relying on your fourth line to create the most offensive pressure. I mean, that's just not, they can help sustain pressure. They can't be the only line that is generating pressure. So that's a long-winded way of saying, Sean, I don't, when I look at the crystal ball, it's still a bit cloudy when it comes to who's going to look the best with whom. I mean, what do you think, Bartz? I mean, they got a lot of options. And now if you're Rick Bowness, it's good to have options. But you also want to land on your landing spot with a little bit of runway, especially if the Jets are going to look to add. I think they should add 2 forwards, 1 fourth-line guy and 1 kind of middle six guy. So then you're going to be experimenting again after March 3rd, depending on when the trade is made.
Yeah. So
take this part.
Ehlers, I think, stood out tonight for me. Yeah, sorry. I thought Ehlers did stand out tonight for me. And again, I think part of the lack of production was, being out of sync and things not going. Ehlers did stand out that he was trying to make things happen tonight. And, sometimes when you're mixing the lines up in the blender, that also can cause a little bit of the not having the chemistry and being a little off. So maybe that had a little bit to do with it tonight. Fourth line, as you talked about it, Carson Kuhlman stood out to me tonight with just making things happen, just on the forecheck, trying to create some turnovers, trying to get something happening for the Jets. And when you talk about acquiring a couple extra forwards, when you look at when you go on a long playoff run, and when it comes down to trying to win a Stanley Cup, a lot of times it's the bottom 6 forwards that can be the difference maker for you. So, if the Jets have the ability to load up the top 2 lines and put some more strength in that third line especially, right? I always think of the Tampa Bay Lightning and a player like Alex Killorn, just an unbelievable third line kind of player, right? So if the Jets can increase a little more on that third line and try to generate a little more for a playoff run, I think that's a big boost. It doesn't always have to be when you're a team, even like Winnipeg, you don't always have to go out and get the big star. You don't always have to go out and find the next big goal scorer to help you win in the playoffs. You've got to win those battles, and those battles sometimes are won in the third and fourth lines.
Before we get into our next topic here, Ken, I want you to give our main man, Sweet Lou, a shout out.
You bet, folks. If you're in the realty market, if you're looking to buy, looking to sell, looking to see what that house down the street is worth, maybe you're looking to move to another neighborhood, you can contact our main man, Lou Ferlin of Royal LePage Dynamic Realty at 204-791-9971 or at the office, 204-989-5000. His email is lou@loufurlan.ca. That's LOU@LOUFURLAN.ca. And Lou's website is www.loufurlan.ca. That's Lou Furlan, excellent realtor, excellent human, and excellent supporter of the community, including the Kenny and Renny show, of which we are very thankful for his support.
That's Sweet Lou, John. If you don't know Sweet Lou, he has reached a legendary proportion in this town. One of the many mythical stories told about him is that Ken almost ended up living in a dumpster like Oscar the Grouch before he got saved by Lou Furlan, who convinced him to stay out of the
lousy apartment to a
tremendous
condo that just elevated in value in a 9-year span. Bart's one of my best moves of all time.
Smart man, that Lou. Ken, what remind me what we were going to talk about with about Rick Bowness?
Well, I'm sure, Bart, it will not surprise you that Sean would like me to highlight one of his smart questions that got answered by Rick Bowness
I honestly
in
forgot.
the post-game address.
I'm not trying to get you to pat me on the back. My brain is like broken. I honestly forgot.
Sure you did.
Happy to be here to stroke the ego, no problem. Sean asked Rick Bowness if he felt the work ethic was where it was at. That was your last question, but earlier in the scrum, you tossed out the old fishing rod and the fishing line to Rick Bowness, and Rick took the bait. So I'd like you to mention what he said to your
what was it? What was the
question? Brilliant question. Let me get it verbatim here. Didn't have your best. No, hang on it. Sorry, it was about. So it's here. So Rick's first question was he mentioned they didn't have their legs or didn't have their best.
Oh, I know.
And you asked why, and he said, I'm going to need to talk to a few of the guys tomorrow.
Okay.
Get their feedback on why. Because you knew precisely. Rick knows the answer. Yeah. He just felt that he wasn't going to bury his players today, but he did send a subtle message by saying, I know what the problem is. I'd like to know, A, if they realize there is a problem, and B, what they're going to do in order to help solve the problem. Because he said, I want them to explain to me what they're feeling, because it seemed to me, Sean, that Rick knew exactly what he was feeling about why things have gone a little bit south here as they've lost 4 of the last 6 games.
So first off, it's a good thing you patted my back, because why? That's just a brilliant question. Asking why. It wasn't that brilliant of a question, but what I do love, I love the response by him. And I think it's another one of these areas where we really contrast his response to that of Paul Maurice. Because what Paul Maurice would have told us is he would have alluded to, we've got a pretty good idea of what's going on here, and we'll address it. And we'll do, that's what he would have given us. He would have told us nothing, but said, don't worry, we've got this all figured out. And then he would have taken it upon himself. I know exactly what you're saying here, and I agree with it 100%. I just love the picture that this paints. That tomorrow morning, the Winnipeg Jets are going to have to walk in early to practice, and they're going to have to walk into Rick Bowness's office with their prepared thesis of why they are not giving the effort that they are supposed to be giving. Talk about, I've got to go into the principal's office and tell him, listen, I haven't been doing my best, and here are the reasons why. And the long answer to this is there are no reasons why. But you've got to go in and explain to Rick Bowness why your effort level isn't where it's supposed to be, why you are holding on to the puck in an area where you're not supposed to be holding on to the puck, why you're doing all of these things that are counter to the system. And he's going to sit back. That's the imagery that's painted in my head. He's going to sit back and say, you tell me why you're not doing these things. You tell me why I can't get an effort out of you. Why explain these things to me. And I love this, because what he's doing is he's putting the onus on the players in a very public way, but also in a private way in that room, that I need to hear what the excuse is, because I'm not sure that there is one. And I need to hear from you what you think the excuse is that you went out and did that last night after we already came off a somewhat disastrous road trip. I love that angle. I love the way he handled that. And I'm glad you brought it up, just because when he said that, my brain kind of just went, pop, because to me, it was one of those little behind the scenes look that you get as a coach where he says nothing but tells you everything, right? Whereas that's the opposite of Paul Maurice. Paul Maurice told you everything but showed you nothing. This is quite the opposite. We have a very good idea of what that practice day that we're both going to be covering is going to look like tomorrow before they head to the ice. I'm very interested to see what that practice is going to look like, Kenny. I'm interested to see the effort level that we're going to have from the players, because I get the sense a lot of these conversations will have happened before they even get out and start handling the pucks.
Yeah, for me, it'll be a short practice, but it will be high in terms of pace, I think. And that's the thing. I mean, Rick wants them to play fast. He was talking about that in the morning. He was talking about it again after the game. I mean, the Jets need to play fast to be successful. That is when they are at their best. That is when they were forcing their opposition. And Rick Bowness, what he also said, once the microphone was passed to somebody else, I think, and the questions weren't quite as brilliant as when Sean had the microphone. He said, we're making, not only are we making life too difficult on ourselves, we're making it too easy on the opponent. And to me, today was another classic example of that. I mean, they didn't make life difficult in the neutral zone for the Buffalo Sabres. And when the Sabres get going with speed, look out. I mean, they're hard to handle. So the Jets, it's so interesting. I mean, because, Sean, we've talked about this a lot. There are some things that have carried over, and there are, some parts of the disease, the affliction, have been hard for the Jets to root out of their game. And there are other parts where, I mean, I loved that Rick got onto the stubbornness angle today, and he pounded home that word so much so that it used it in my lead today in my post-game story. I mean, that's one S word that it's super interesting, because sometimes stubbornness can be a very redeeming quality, because that belief in yourself and system and all that all of those other things, that's an essential quality to a degree. But when it comes to overpassing, and Nikolai Ehlers used the word trying to force pucks into small spaces, that's when teams get in trouble, and that stubbornness can be sort of a self-defeating prophecy in some regards. So this is beautiful. I mean, we talk about this all the time. I mean, Jets won 8 of 9, and everyone's like, oh, they're cruising. They're never going to lose another game. But teams that win don't win without having to deal with adversity, without being challenged. This is another classic example of what we're going to learn about the Jets, where we've learned a lot through the game so far. We're going to learn a lot about them in these last 2 before the break. Because they can't afford to be putting things on cruise control and thinking about what beach they're going to be laying on during a 5-day break. They need to bring their work boots back on Saturday against a team they went up 3-0 against the other night, and allowed them to get right back into the game before having to pull it out in the third period. So it's a fascinating time. I mean, it was never going to be easy. The Jets were never going to sustain an 8 of 9 pace. But they also can't afford to be going 4 out of 6 losses down the stretch either, because then all of a sudden, all the teams that are going to be looking up at them, the Jets are going to find themselves in a battle for the wild card rather than being in a battle for first in the Central and first in the Western Conference. So, I mean, there are a lot of good teams in the West, but there's no dominant team, and that's the beauty, and that's what Bartz was getting at earlier. The reason you go for it is because it's still wide open. And we say it's wide open, even though it houses the Stanley Cup champion, who has not had their captain at their disposal for any games this year. So even with all that said, doesn't matter. You got to take a chance when the chances are there. I think it's going to be very interesting. And Bart's, for me, I mean, Sean and I have discussed this. I think a guy like Ivan Barbashev is perfect for the Jets. You got a guy who plays a physical game. You can play him in the top 6. You can play him with Lowry. You got a human wrecking ball, a guy that can score those greasy, gritty goals in the playoffs. He knocked Sam Girard out of the entire playoffs last year with a heavy hit. He is a Stanley Cup champion. I think that's the one thing. The Jets have got a bunch of guys who played in the Western Conference Final, in the Stanley Cup Final with Schmidt and Dillon. But I think they could use a guy that's lifted the mug, a guy who's been there before, a guy who knows what it takes to get to 16 wins. And that is an element I think that really could help the Jets kind of stabilize at a time where they've kind of, I wouldn't say fallen off the rails, but have sort of, slipped a little bit here when things seem to be, turning the corner.
I'm going to tell you, sorry, just quick, Bart, because I got to change it to something, and I want to go to you with this, but I got to say that was an impressive turn at the buffet. I'm imagining in the background that Kenny popped the button off of his suit jacket the way that Kelly Rudy did a couple seasons ago live on the broadcast. That was a heck of a trip to the buffet, the proverbial buffet on that one. John, I want to go in a direction with you, and it's built on a couple of the questions some of the people are asking. Your beer league says, are the Jets for real? You're in an interesting perspective, and I know this because, so for example, when we did that Hockey Night in Canada game against Pittsburgh, I saw that game, and then the very next night I go and I see the Avalanche and the Ottawa Senators play. Now, these are two teams that I've seen play against the Jets, but when you see two different teams play a game, it's an entirely different ball game. Like, it's a different style. So one of the advantages that John has over myself and Ken, I'm talking to the chat room in this case and the audience in this case, is that John is seeing a whole bunch. He does a lot of national games. So he's seeing Montreal against, Florida, and he's seeing Toronto against Seattle, and so on and so forth. He's kind of going across the board. He's seeing a lot of different styles. So he's got a really good perspective on the teams across the league and the styles of game that he thinks can work. The Winnipeg Jets against the Pittsburgh Penguins, the last Winnipeg Jets game that you did, Bartz, was a blueprint game. That was a game that Rick Bowness says that is what our team is supposed to look like. When you see the Winnipeg Jets look like that, you touched a little bit on this earlier in the show, but when you see the Winnipeg Jets look like that, what kind of capability do you think this team has compared to the best in the league?
Yeah, well, I did the one against Ottawa too on Hockey Day where they rolled over the Senators. So
yes,
and that game, actually, I said before the game, I said if this isn't close, it's going to be 5-1 Winnipeg, and it ended 5-1 Winnipeg. So I was just going to go back for one sec. Though I was thinking about what you were saying with Rick Bowness and how he was addressing that. I'm going to ask the players. It's almost like he's the dad saying, "I'm not mad at you. I'm just disappointed."
Yeah, yeah.
That's kind of the approach I think he'll take with them right now. He's like, guys, I'm not mad at you. I'm just disappointed. Okay, so how do they play? Yeah, when you go back to the Pittsburgh game, I think that's a great example of sort of how they can dominate. I think that they're overall they're big down the middle too, and that's a huge thing, especially come playoff time. So I think if the Jets can play like they did then with the kind of team they have, that's built for some playoff success. And I that's sort of like, there's some nights you watch Winnipeg and it's not the flashiest thing, and that's okay because you look at it and go, but that's the kind of game that'll win in the playoffs for you. So, the lobster came. That's lovely. Thank you. Thank you. I'll give you a tip. Just leave it there. It's fine. So I think that that's the style of play that'll work well for them in the playoffs. That's why I think, they're in a situation where this is a year you're right. Colorado is going to be in there. You may have them in the first round, so you got to be ready for that. Will Landeskog be back, and how will they look because they've gone all year not assembled the same way? There's still going to be a tough challenge, but really a chance this year, I think, for the Jets to kind of go for it. So you got to look at how can you make the team even better for the style you want to play to win in the playoffs. And here's a name for you. Barbashev, I like the toughness. I know Jonathan Taves has been mentioned a lot to come home. Ryan O'Reilly might be on the block. If the Jets can beat the Blues on Monday and bump St. Louis down a little lower, that can help too. Here's one for you, though. An interesting player. We kind of talked about him the other night, and Gals was mentioning it. If the Islanders were to fall out of it and they were to sell Jean-Gabriel Pageau, top 5 face-off guy in the league.
Now you're speaking.
Production. He's got a little grit, a little speed to his game. Short-handed goals. He's a penalty killer. That's a really interesting player to keep an eye on. If the Islanders were to fall out of it, if they were to start selling off players and Pageau became available, I could see a lot of teams really interested in Jean-Gabriel Pageau for what he could bring. So that's just a name. Maybe we'll see how things go with the Islanders, but if they got into a situation where they had to sell, that might be an attractive pickup for a playoff team for what he can offer, what he can bring. What do you guys think of that one?
And there are two quick ones, Sean. 3 more years after this one at 5.5, and he's a 30-year-old player. So if you're talking about widening the window,
yes,
he fits with their window at a pretty, reasonable price. Yes, I understand he's more of a third-line player, but he's not not necessarily a third-line talent because of the heavy minutes he can play. And man, I mean, I've said Barbashev beside Lowry. Pajot and Lowry would make a great combo. That kind of, Sean, you used the term, the old battering ram, or what was the way you used to say the Lowry's line kind of like hit you over the head. Blunt force. They were the blunt force trauma kind of unit in the playoffs, and so responsible, Bartz. I mean, I like that. I like that idea a lot. And if I also think the Jets could be looking at a defenseman that plays with some jam, and I think Luke Shen is a great one. But if we're going to stay on the Islanders, Scott Mayfield, I think also is a guy who's got some great playoff experience, got to the Eastern Conference Final a couple times. He is also a pending UFA for the Islanders. I would think that he's going to garner some interest as well here as we move along.
And the Islanders, just to touch on that, we were sorry there, Sean. The Islanders have to decide. They have to decide what they're going to do and where they are. I don't think they're the same team that made the conference final 2 years in a row a couple years ago. I think that's moved on. I think Devon Taves leaving them was a big change. Barry Trotz being gone. They're not the team, I don't believe at least, they're not the team that made the conference final 2 years in a row anymore. So they now have to decide, are they still close enough that if they try to improve, they can get back? Or are they in a situation where they have to now step back and maybe make some changes to sort of reset and move forward? So that's on a separate note. The Islanders need to figure out their own business there too. But they're kind of in that, they're on the outside looking in right now. They're kind of in the race, but are you really that team that went to the conference final, and we're battling the Lightning for a chance to play in the Stanley Cup? So, I see a gap there, and they've got to decide what they're going to do.
We got to wrap this up fairly quickly here, but I wouldn't mind touching on something before we do this, before we hand out the home field Dig Deeper award for our chat room. The fans booing tonight, Ken. The Bronx cheer came out not once, not twice, not even thrice, a bunch of times tonight. The fans sure let them know it, and it was funny up in the press box on the broadcast side. Christian O'Mell from CJOB had said, well, I wonder if Blake Wheeler is going to have a problem with this. What did you take away from, a first place team that has, for the most part, especially in this building, given the fans a lot to cheer about this season? I know that was god awful. I know that was to me, that was a beatdown. I said that on Twitter. I haven't seen a team do to the Jets this season, maybe even a couple of years, do to the Jets what the Buffalo Sabres did to them tonight. What did you take away from the Bronx cheer that the team got tonight?
Yeah, I mean, the Bronx cheer came after, I think maybe it was almost 16 minutes without a shot on goal. So I've got no problem with that. I mean, I don't think that this is not a ruthless fan base. I think that, because you boo a couple times in one game does not make a fan any less appreciative of the efforts that have been put forth throughout the course of, 40, what are we at now here? Game 50 today, right? Yeah, 50. Today's game 50. So
50.
It's not a very regular occurrence, and I don't think that I don't think players are out there all that concerned about any type of booing. There was some booing after shot attempts that were passed on. I mean, whatever. That's to me. It was obviously noteworthy. I don't see it as there's a lot more roars in the building than cheers for the Jets this year, and deservedly so. I mean, there's a team that's battling for first in the Central and battling for first in the Western Conference, but there are going to be nights where things do not go smoothly, and that's the way it goes. I mean, do I think it's warranted? I mean, I would say look bigger picture, but it's not up to me. And it's my job to look at the bigger picture. It's not a fan's job to do that. So I don't profess to tell them how to use their vocal cords.
John, you've got a zealousness for the game that I absolutely love in your call. I'm sure that you've seen times where jerseys have been thrown on the ice, and you've called the heck out of that. What do you take away from fans expressing themselves the way it happened tonight?
Look. I'm going to tell you, and this is for all the Jets fans out there. Your team is a contender, all right? So they're high expectations. The booing tonight is just because there's high expectations. You've got a shot at winning the Western Conference this year and possibly playing in the Stanley Cup final. Will you? I don't know. You got to play the games. You've got to, well, not you, the fans, the players do, but you know what I mean. The Jets, I think, have a shot. I think it's an expectation, and I think it's just again, it's expectations, and they're hoping for the best, so they get a little frustrated tonight when you're struggling to look at things tonight.
Sorry, we're just having a little bit of problems with. I know you're not staying at the Fairmont, but
the internet's a little wonky.
The internet's a little wonky.
Cutting out on us, John.
We've kind of lost you there. That's why Winnipeg takes the shots.
Am I breaking up?
You're breaking. You're entirely breaking up. I think you're back now. Hold on. If you want to finish your point out, I think you're back.
See, I went on this whole let's have a great shot at winning, and the internet breaks up.
It's Winnipeg.
Is it working
it's
now?
What the
Now
players complain about. Yeah, you're good now. You're good now.
A whole diatribe about how good the Jets will be. Okay, now I have to shorten it up. I went on this whole diatribe about how I think the Jets really have a chance of winning the West, how good of a team they could be, and the internet breaks up, so nobody's going to believe me. So a real short version of it.
No, it's breaking up again. I'm sorry. It's so as soon as you there. Okay, take it. Just go.
Yeah.
Technical difficulties are part of our brand, boys. This is it. This is our brand.
No, see, my screen's frozen. So this is it. Bart is going to go back and he's going to keep producing the stereotype that the internet in Winnipeg sucks. It clearly, in this case, it does. Sorry about that, Bart. Bart was going to nail that. I know he was going to. We're going to have him back maybe for one of the next couple shows this weekend, and he can finish out that point because I really wanted him to get to that point. But we're going to shut this show down. I got to say this. We love to give acknowledgement where acknowledgement is due. Kenny, you rocked it as usual. Bart's, I love the Pajot. No one had brought up Pajot before this, and I'll tell you, Pajot is complete in a can. When he got picked up by the New York Islanders, he was phenomenal. If you go back even to the time that the Ottawa Senators took the Pittsburgh Penguins, the first year that they won the Stanley Cup, not the first year, but the 2015 of the 2015-16, the back-to-back years that they won it, 2016-17, 2016 the year, the Ottawa Senators took them to overtime in Game 7. Pajot was glorious in that series as well. He'd be phenomenal. That's the first time I heard that. That's why we bring guys like Bart's on the show, because they've got the national perspective. They see these things. That's beautiful. I love that addition to the conversation. Bart, it was great to have you. Looking forward to doing the game with you on Saturday. Chat room, you absolutely rocked it as usual. Before we let everyone go, I'm going to bring in the home field dig deeper comment of the game. I'm going to hand this one out to Top Line Media, who says the blender being out emphasizes the need for another top six forward. I like this one. I'm not saying it's definitively a thing. I'm not saying that maybe there's not, a top six that can work around and you can find it, or that the Jets aren't maybe just going through a jag here. But I like this idea of when Rick Bowness is talking about the top six and he's kind of juggling everybody around. The one thing that seems to be missing there is the idea that, hey, guys, in the top six, if you're not getting this going, there's a lot of room in the bottom six, and I've got someone here that Chevy picked up at the trade deadline that could just keep you honest and keep you on your toes here. For that, Top Line Media gets the home field dig deeper comment of the show, and that means he wins the home field dig deeper / Kenny and Renny Dig Deeper shovel, the trunk shovel that goes in the back that is probably going to be fairly useful in the coming days here. I know, actually, I think we were supposed to get a little bit of snow, and then it just gets too cold to snow, which is what happens here in Winnipeg. But congratulations, Top Line Media. You know what to do. Send me a message, and I know that you and I have chatted back and forth. So send me a message with your full name and an email address to @SN Sean Reynolds, and I will send you a voucher for your very own home field Dig Deeper shovel. Congratulations, Top Line Media.
Nice job by
and
Nick
I
there.
would like great job, chat room, as usual, and I would like to end the show the way I always do. If you appreciate the conversations happening in these spaces, the conversations on shows like Kenny and Renny or Winnipeg Sports Talk or the Boys of the Legal Curve, please appreciate the sponsors that are fighting to keep these conversations going in these spaces. For us, that's Vittorio Rossi, TransCanada Brewing Company, the Johnson Group, Lou Furlan, and Homefield. Thank you so much, everybody. It's Hockey Night in Canada coming up next when the Jets are trying to get off the schneid and turn things around before the All-Star break. You will hear John Bartlett. You will hear Gary Galley. You will hear Sean Reynolds. Maybe we'll even try and squeeze Ken Wiebe onto the show one more time. We'll see if we can do it. Other than that,
we should.
thanks, everybody.
We should.
We will chat with you after the next game.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Bartz.